Hello guys, welcome back to my channel. Today I'm going to be doing a book recommendations video, but I'm going to be doing Christian book recs. So I've done a video before on my top Christian books, and all of those books I love so much. I've read probably more than once, and I would recommend to literally everyone. I would honestly recommend watching that video. Well, you don't have to watch it first, but I would just recommend watching that video because all of those books I love so much. They've impacted me so much. But I wanted to do another video kind of on topics. So like specific book recs in a specific topic, like marriage, anxiety, leadership, that kind of thing. So that's what I'm going to be talking about today. I love all of these books. I think they're so good. I feel like you can learn so much from them. Obviously, here's a disclaimer. The Bible is a great source of knowledge, but I'm assuming if you're coming into this video, you already know that. Like, the Bible is the #1 truth. It's the ultimate truth. God definitely used these writers to teach something, but it isn't the ultimate truth. It's not from God's mouth or Jesus's mouth. So just wanted to say that. But I love all of these books. I feel like I've learned so much from them, and I just recommend them. So let's get into it. I'm gonna stop rambling and let's get started. The first category is marriage. So I have 3 books for marriage. I have one for dating as well, but it kind of can go into marriage as well. I'm just gonna start. So first is The Meaning of Marriage by Timothy Keller. I read this before I got married, but honestly I feel like before you get married, when you're married, it's a great book. So it says facing the complexities of commitment with the wisdom of God. It basically is about the vision of marriage, what marriage is supposed to be, why God created marriage. It says Timothy Keller, with insights from Kathy, his wife of 37 years, shows marriage to be a glorious relationship that is also misunderstood and mysterious. The Meaning of Marriage offers instruction on how to have a successful marriage and is essentially reading for anyone who wants to know God and love more deeply in this life. So marriage is definitely a picture of how much God loves us with the way that you're supposed to love your spouse. And I feel like God created marriage to push us in our journey, our faith journey. I feel like for most people, there's only so much you can do by yourself. And so God created a helpmate for you. So if you are married, if you are getting married soon, if you're engaged, I think this is a great book. If you know someone that is getting married, a great gift to give them, because I feel like when you're getting married, you're getting things for your house and things for the wedding, all that stuff. But really, are you focusing on the marriage? Once all the wedding is gone, the honeymoon's over, what happens now? So I would recommend this book, or to gift it to somebody. It's so good. Really love this book. Highly recommend if you're getting married, if you are married, if you want to one day get married. It's a great book. Next is The Power of a Praying Wife by Stormy O'Martian. So this is pretty short, and it's basically just a bunch of prayers that you can pray over your husband. And I love this book. So this has like different chapters that basically have prayers that you should pray over your husband. So like his work, his finances, his affection, his mind, his fears, his purpose, his health, his protection, all this stuff. And there's like, how many chapters? 31. And basically there's a few pages on why you should pray over that, and then a prayer to pray, and then some verses. And I really love this. I feel like this is a great like devotional because you can just read one chapter, pray over that specifically, the next day do the same thing. And I read this, I think like in the beginning of our marriage, and I really, really love it. So I highly recommend if you are married, if you're a wife, to read this book. Great book, great prompts to pray for your husband, because we should be praying for our husband. So next is The 5 Love Languages by Gary Chapman. This, you don't have to be married to read it, but I think this is the marriage one. I think there's different ones for if you're single, dating, I don't really know. But basically, if you don't know, the 5 love languages are words of affirmation, acts of service, receiving gifts, quality time, and physical touch. And I think honestly, it's very important to know your significant other or your spouse's love language. I do think it changes over time. Like, I feel like when I was dating, my love languages are different than now that I'm married. I feel like it will probably change as I become a mom one day, all that stuff. But I think it's important to know your love languages, how you receive love, how you give love, and especially how your spouse receives love, because you could be like telling them you love them, how amazing they are, all this stuff, but if their love language isn't words of affirmation, they aren't going to receive it as love. So I highly recommend this. It's very short, easy read, and it just describes them, and you can also take the test online to figure out what your love language is. So highly recommend this and just learning the love language. So next is, I put this under the dating category because technically I read this when I was dating or single. I don't know. But it's Single, Dating, Engaged, Married by Ben Stewart. Basically, it goes through each category, the 4 critical seasons of a relationship, and talks about it. And I really enjoy this book. I feel like when I was like single dating, I found this really helpful. This book will help you chart a course through the 4 relational stages, and each we will look at what eternal purposes should be pursued. As we embrace God's purposes for every stage, we can enjoy the confidence of knowing that we are leveraging our lives for what matters most. So I really, really enjoyed this book. I feel like it was very helpful for me in that season of my life. Obviously, it talks about engagement and marriage as well, but it does touch on singleness dating. So if you're in that stage, any of these stages, highly recommend. Okay, so that's the only book I have on dating because it's really the only book that I read during that phase. So anyways, next we are getting onto leadership. So these books are books that I would recommend if you just want to grow in leadership. Maybe, I don't know. I don't know what phase of life you're in, but I read both of these in ministry school and I do think everyone should read them. I think they are really, really good books. So first is The Bait of Satan by John Bevere. And this is about offense. Getting offended. It says the bait of Satan exposes one of the most deceptive snares Satan uses to get believers out of the will of God. Offense. This trap restrains countless Christians, severs relationships, and widens the gulfs between us. Jesus said it is impossible that no offenses should come, Luke 17:1. Although you will encounter offense, you can choose how you will react. In this new 20th anniversary edition, John Bevere shows you how to identify the traps ahead of you and escape the victim mentality. With declaration-style prayers and testimonials from people whose lives have been changed by his message, this book will inspire you to stay free from offense and its destructive power. Don't let anyone affect your relationship with God. Are you compelled to tell your side of the story? Do you fight thoughts of suspicion or distrust? Or are you constantly rehearsing past hurts? Have you lost hope because of what someone did to you? So basically, it's just about offense, taking offense to things, being offended by people, and how to work on that, not do that, because Jesus, when he was on earth, did not get offended by people. When people were talking about him and what he did and like not believing him, he just like didn't care. I mean, he didn't get offended. Like, you don't see Jesus getting offended. And so I think this is such a good read about offense, how to deal with it. And it's the bait of Satan. Satan uses offense to cause issues in relationships, in Christians, and it just like widens, like it said, it like widens the gulf, or like creates distance between people because you just get offended when that is what Satan is using to try to attack you in your relationship. So I highly recommend this book. It's so good. Next is The Power of Humility by R.T. Kendall. This is about humility, obviously, and it says the power and freedom of a humble life. Jesus preaches in the Gospels that says God opposes the proud but gives grace to the humble. So that's a verse in the Bible, and this is about humility. So it says pride is often the true reason why we get our feelings hurt, why we feel rejection, why we won't admit to mistakes, why we want to be seen with certain people, and why we stay angry. Jesus gives us the perfect example of a powerful life lived without conceit, smugness, or arrogance. So why do we not want to admit to our pride? It is because of our pride. In The Power of Humility, R.T. Kendall challenges us to look deeply into our hearts and motives to recognize the pride and self-righteousness there. Using personal stories and enlightening examples from the Bible, he demonstrates how pride interferes with a close relationship with God and reveals how to overcome pride and become more like Jesus. So very much talking about pride and how we all struggle with pride, but how Jesus exhibited humility while he was on earth, and that's what we should be exhibiting as well. So highly recommend this book, and it's pretty short. I feel like all these are pretty short. So those are the leadership books, and now we're going to go on to personal growth. So all these books are just like books that I would just recommend to anyone that are just going to encourage you. So let's get started. I actually talked about this book in my top 10 or my top faith books, but I feel like it does help with personal growth because it is kind of like a devotional. I don't really know. Basically, it's Cultivating the Fruit of the Spirit by Christopher J.H. Wright, Growing in Christ-likeness. So it's about the fruit of the Spirit and how Jesus exhibited those fruits and how we should. And I really recommend it. I'm not going to go on too in depth because I did talk about it in that video, but highly recommend this. Super short. I used it as like a little devotional and it's just so good. So next I have a couple books by Lisa TerKeurst. So the first one that I feel like so many people have read is Uninvited by Lisa TerKeurst. Obviously, it says living loved when you feel less than, left out, and lonely. And I feel like if you're a teenager, if you're in your early 20s, honestly, I think any girl would take so much out of this book. I love it so much. I read it, I think when I was in high school or college, I can't remember, but I love Lisa TerKeurst's writing. I think this was my first book by her, and I just love her book because I feel like her writing is so good and you learn so much from her books. And so it says, the enemy wants us to feel rejected, left out, lonely, and less than. In Uninvited, Lisa shares her own deeply personal experiences of rejection. She leans in to honestly examine the roots of rejection, as well as rejection's ability to poison relationships from the inside out, including our relationship with God. So yeah, I feel like if you struggle with rejection, feeling left out, lonely, less than, honestly, I feel like all of us struggle with those things. And this book is so good, so I highly recommend that. This is Good Boundaries and Goodbyes by Lisa TerKeurst. It says loving others without losing the best of who you are. And this is all about boundaries and setting boundaries with people and just about relationships, when you should be cutting ties, but when you should set boundaries, all that stuff. And I feel like it was so good. I learned so much from this book and I highly recommend. I think I read this in 2023. I'm pretty sure it came out at the end of 2022 and I love it so much. So I think this is a recent release and I highly recommend if you want to read more about boundaries, setting them, relationships, that kind of thing. Next is If I Were God, I'd End All the Pain by John Dickson. So this book, as you can see, is tiny, and this is basically about like why God allows pain and bad things to happen, because I feel like as a Christian, sometimes it can be hard to grapple with the idea of God who is all powerful and all loving, allowing bad things to happen. And this book is so good, even though it's so tiny. I highly recommend it. Can we still believe in God in the face of all the suffering and pain in the world? In the first of a new series of short books, John Dixon looks honestly at the questions and provides some compelling answers. He looks briefly at the alternative explanations for suffering provided by Hinduism, Buddhism, Islam, and atheism before turning to what the Bible itself says about God, justice, and suffering. So I feel like this is such a good book. Like literally, how many pages is this book? Like 70 something pages. It's so quick. Like everyone should read this book. Like it's so good, and I feel like something a lot of people will grapple with. So highly recommend. Incredible. Lastly, we have the Screw Tape Letters by C.S. Lewis. We actually own this book, but my husband has it at his work, so I'm gonna put it on the screen. But if you don't know, C.S. Lewis is a insanely famous author, writer. I'm pretty sure he wrote the Chronicles of Narnia, which I've never read, but he did write those. Anyway, so this book is very interesting. I've never read a book like this, and I honestly think everyone should read it. This basically follows two demons, and Uncle Screwtape is writing to Wormwood and basically giving him advice on how to sway humans away from the Lord, how to like put minor inconveniences in their life to like sway them away from their relationship with God and like move their focus away from God. And it's so interesting. Like that summary sounds so interesting, and I feel like you really learn that like obviously Satan does terrible things and can cause people to do terrible things, but he really is in the just like minor inconveniences of life that can cause you to move away from God, sway away from God, just because of minor inconveniences, small things, significantly small things in life. And I highly recommend this book. It's so good, and I feel like you just learn so much, and it's like such an interesting book. Like it's insane that someone wrote a book like this. It's so good, so I highly recommend that. The last category is anxiety, and I have one book for that, which is Get Out of Your Head by Jenny Allen. It says Stopping the Spiral of Toxic Thoughts. There's specifically one chapter in this book that I've read multiple times. I'm trying to find it. It's chapter 10 called Unafraid. I choose to surrender my fears to God, and it's basically about anxiety and also what to do, like grab the thought, diagnose the thought, take it to God and make a choice. What is it? Is it true? What does God say about it? Am I going to believe God? And it's just so good. So I really recommend this book if you have anxiety or if you just have like spiraling thoughts. Honestly, I need to read this book again soon because it's so good. So I have other books that I've read on anxiety, but I feel like this one really like stood out to me, and I've like thought about it and read it more than once, like specific chapters more than once. So I highly recommend if you have anxiety, spiraling thoughts. This could really help. Obviously, I know anxiety can also be diagnosed where you need medicine or to go to a doctor or something like that, but I feel like a lot of us have like spiraling thoughts, anxious thoughts, things like that, and I think this book is so good. So highly recommend. And that is it. So that's all the books I have to recommend today. Let me know if you want me to do more of these. I have read other books that I feel like these are like my top recommendations right now, and I just highly recommend them all. I think you'll learn a lot from them, but obviously read your Bible. It's great. But yeah, so I hope you enjoyed this video. If you have some other Christian books that you recommend, please let me know because I'm always looking for other Christian and faith-based books. But I think that's it, and I'll see you very soon for my next video. Bye.